Welcome to Lesson 3. Let's explore the fish's habitat and changes in environment. The environment in which fish live is quite different from ours, but they have the same basic needs as humans: oxygen, food, shelter, water, and ways to eliminate waste. In order to survive, their needs must be met in a habitat that is shared with many other living things. The preferred habitat of fish varies depending on many factors. The young of some fish, like salmon and trout, prefer shallow streams with clean gravel bottoms. In later stages, they travel to deeper rivers with shaded, protected pools. Other species, like bass, catfish, and eels, prefer the deeper, murky waters of ponds and lakes. A fish's habitat must meet these needs in the same way that our habitat meets our needs. The main difference in the fish's habitat is obvious. It's made of water. Fish do not breathe air in the same way we do. They breathe by taking water into their mouths, where it passes over their gills and absorb oxygen through the water. This means that oxygen must be dissolved in the water. It also means that the fish are very vulnerable to drought and pollution. The implications for freshwater organisms are great because it means there are very few places where they can live. Only 3% of the world's water is freshwater. Freshwater systems are vulnerable to both natural and human pressures. A fish's habitat can dry up because of very little rainfall or because of activities such as road construction. Freshwater habitats are also being destroyed by pollutants from many sources. Access to fresh water is sometimes made difficult by hydro dams. When there is so little freshwater habitats available for fish, these threats are serious. Habitats change. Some changes occur naturally, like seasons changing, and some are caused by human impact, including pollution and highway construction. For these living things to survive, they must be able to adapt to these changes so their basic needs continue to be met. What effect does melting ice have on fish? When the ice starts to melt in spring, the denser water from the ice sinks to the bottom of the lake or stream, bringing the oxygen with it that was trapped in the ice over the winter. The mixing process also stirs the sediment on the bottom and forces the nutrients which have settled there over winter back into the water. This mixture is super important for fish survival. Let's take a look at an example from the past. Down through the centuries, Atlantic salmon were important sources of food for Aboriginal peoples and the European settlers of eastern North America. The species was highly prized in springtime as some of the first sources of fresh protein, especially after a long cold winter. The availability of nutritious food for both local consumption and trading purposes contributed to the economic growth of coastal regions in eastern North America during the 18th and 19th centuries. It is well known that salmon have disappeared from many parts of its former range. Today, salmon are gone from most rivers of New England and the inland rivers of Quebec and Ontario along the St. Lawrence River up to Lake Ontario, due largely to polluted water conditions and impassable barriers to migration. Decline of fisheries for salmon coincided with the comings of the Industrial Revolution at the end of the 18th century. The revolution radically affected the economic structure of society around the world. The revolution caused an explosion of economic activity, which resulted in an increase in population and the growth of towns and cities. The thinking behind the Industrial Revolution was an increase in material wealth was good, regardless of its effects on the environment. Thus, in North America, particularly in New England, the best rivers were affected. They were polluted, dammed, and eventually ruined by detrimental effects of industrial growth. History has revealed a change in attitude regarding natural resources. The Aboriginal populations in North America respected and protected species such as salmon. With the coming of European settlers came careless disregard for their preservation in spite of their value as natural resources. Today, we want to be very careful to ensure our actions are not harming the wildlife around us, especially the freshwater species. Freshwater habitats are limited, so it's super important that we take care of them and keep the fish healthy. Now it's time for the activity, a day in the life of a fish. And then we will take a look at Lesson 4, Life in Freshwater.